Warmongering Trump administration targets a small boat and kills 11. Trump sending warships to threaten Venezuela. Fire expert talks about unnatural fires. All that and more coming up next. Tonight, a late edition of Alternative News. It's Friday, September 5th, 2025. As I go over some of the top stories of the week not covered by the mainstream media. Up first, a warmongering Trump administration, as if supporting genocide and Israeli war crimes isn't enough. The Trump admin targeted a small boat off the coast of Venezuela, killing at least 11. And they also sent warships to threaten Venezuela. Here's Professor James Fetzer talking about it, and also he'll cover both stories here a little bit in more in depth. Oops. Here we go.
This is Jim Fetzer, your host on Authentic News, right here in RBN Live. This 4th day of September 2025. We begin with several developments in Venezuela. Trump took out a boatload, I think as many as 11 were killed, claiming they were a Venezuelan gang dealing drugs. A very small boat, but it was in international waters. There was no due process. It was an obliteration. It was a violation of international law. It was an insult to the world. Here's antiwar.com reporting. Trump claims U.S. strike on boat near Venezuela targeted Tren de Agua gang. President Trump claimed in a post on Truth Social that a U.S. military strike on a boat near Venezuela, they're equivocating because it was in international waters, targeted Tren de Agua, a Venezuelan gang that the Trump admin recently designated a terrorist organization. The post came after Secretary of State Rubio said the U.S. conducted a strike against a boat that had departed Venezuela. Earlier this morning, on my orders, U.S. military forces conducted a kinetic strike against positively identified Tren de Agua narco-terrorists in the Southcom area, responsibility the president declared. Trump posted a video of the strike, claimed it killed 11 terrorists, though the evidence has no evidence that been provided to back up his claim. No U.S. forces were harmed in the strike. Please let this service notice that anybody even thinking about bringing guns to the United States of America. Now, if you look at the distance between the coast of Venezuela and the United States and the size of this little boat, it's completely absurd for him to be suggesting they were headed to the United States with a supply of drugs from Venezuela. Utterly preposterous. Meanwhile, on a far larger scale, U.S. warships lock on Venezuela. 1,200 missiles ready. Maduro calls deployment the greatest danger in 100 years. 8 U.S. warships carrying 1,200 missiles are now sitting off Venezuela's coast. The timing is not random. The deployment came one day after Trump met with Putin. Russia is supposed to be Venezuela's shield, yet it stayed silent. No condemnation, no defense, no deterrence. That is not passivity. That's a signal the trade has already been made, and Venezuela was the bargaining chip. 8 U.S. military vessels armed with 1,200 missiles were targeting his country, calling the presence of these ships an absolutely criminal, bloody threat, warning of the greatest danger seen on our continent in the last 100 years. Maduro's warning is not theater. It is the reaction of a man who sees war coming. He has mobilized 4 million militia members because he expects an attack, not a diplomatic note. This is no cartel raid. The Pentagon does not deploy missile destroyers to chase smugglers. It deploys them to shatter defenses, to neutralize governments, to redraw maps. Yes. Well, we'll see.
I also included the actual footage. Oh, wow, now my mic suddenly is coming through. A little bit loud there. So I also included the actual footage of that attack you saw there by the Trump administration on that small boat that Professor James Fetzer was just talking about on his show, Authentic News, which you can check out on the Republic Broadcasting Network website. Next, we're going to check out massive protests on Labor Day. And these protests finally are to the extent that now even the mainstream media can no longer ignore what's going on.
Protesters taking to the streets on Labor Day from Auburn, Maine to Newport, Tennessee, St. Joseph, Michigan to Ventura, California, railing against President Trump and other billionaires who they claim are taking power away from the working class.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, ice ages have got to go.
In the nation's capital, protesters angry over Trump's takeover of law enforcement in D.C., announcing a week of demonstrations on Capitol Hill this week as lawmakers return from summer recess.
We call not only on community leaders, but our elected officials to stand with us as we continue to fight to protect home rule.
D.C.'s mayor struggling to walk a political tightrope, initially welcoming federal law enforcement, but later saying the involvement of immigration agents went too far, criticizing the use by some agents of masks to hide their identities. But Trump praising D.C.'s mayor yesterday, saying, wow, Mayor Muriel Bowser of D.C. has become very popular because she worked with me and my great people in bringing crime down to virtually nothing in D.C. The Trump administration says among the recent arrests in D.C. is a suspected MS-13 gang member in the country illegally.
No troops in Chicago! No troops in Chicago!
In Chicago, demonstrators condemning Trump's threat to launch an immigration crackdown in the Windy City as soon as this week.
We're going to defend our democracy in the city of Chicago. We're going to protect the humanity of every single person in the city of Chicago.
The mayor threatening legal action and signing an order barring Chicago police from helping federal authorities with immigration enforcement. In the meantime, new data shows the administration's immigration crackdown is reshaping the U.S. labor force. More than 1.2 million immigrants have vanished from the workforce since January. Immigrants make up nearly 1 in 5 U.S. workers, including nearly half of all farm workers and 1/3 of construction workers. Farm advocates say crops have been left to rot, and contractors say they're now struggling to fill crews at job sites.
Now, union leaders warn that the impact goes far beyond farms and construction sites, pointing to hospitals and nursing homes, where immigrants also make up a large share of the workforce.
They didn't show all of Trump's agents beating people, but some of the other alternative news channels do show protests, and they show Trump's agents hiding behind masks and beating people, using all kinds of weapons that fire, as well as batons. 3 or 4, 5 agents on one protester, oftentimes a weak female or an elderly person. Pretty cowardly and unpatriotic, if you ask me. Let's watch Trump pretend he got shot to get RFK Jr. to stop running against him as an independent. Check this out. So I'm going to show you a couple of things here. He ducks down. Now they had that all set up. See that little it's about waist high. It's like a little wall. They have it on the stage because right now they're putting fake blood on him. This was all set up, and he never actually suffered a permanent injury to his ear. And then he tells them not to he tells them to wait so they can get more pictures. If he was hurt, he wouldn't be worried about waiting to get more pictures. A lot of people were warning that stuff was going on, but I'll show you in a minute where the gun recoils. The Secret Service agent gun recoils. He's the one shooting. But they're down for an awful long time there after supposedly Matthew Crooks was already dead. What are they doing? They're putting fake blood on him. And they're going to make sure that he's in just the right position for pictures, perfect pictures. Why, if you just got shot from a crowd, why would you be looking at the crowd, pumping your fist or raising your thumb? Doesn't really make sense. You'd be cowering away, or you'd be wanting to get away. He doesn't know if someone else is going to shoot. How does he know someone else isn't going to shoot? Look at this is fake. This is fake. If that was real, he wouldn't be engaging the crowd like that. He would be worried somebody else could shoot at any moment. He wouldn't know what's going on. But look at him. He's pumping his fist. He punched that girl in the face right there. Check this next clip out. I want to show you real quick also. Look at this. The gun recoils. That's the Secret Service agent. He's the one that shoots when Trump touches his ear after you see the gun recoil because the Secret Service agent, I'll back it up again. And when that gun recoils, Trump touches his ear. So he didn't really get shot, I don't think, Trump, because there was no permanent injury. And when he ducked down behind that if he didn't put up that little barrier, that little wall, we could see what's going on. We wouldn't say that they put blood on him because we'd be able to see what's going on, but they put that wall up so you can't see. And let me get to my next point before we switch to the next topic. Check this out. So, Junior, when Trump pretended to get shot, the first thing he did was he called RFK Jr., knowing Junior was running as an independent against him. And at the time, there were more independents registered in the United States than there were Democrats or Republicans. I almost want to say more than Republicans and Democrats combined, but I don't recall. So Trump used one of his his deception trump cards by playing on Junior's PTSD. Junior has post-traumatic stress disorder because RFK Jr.'s father was killed when he was a teenager, and Junior was actually nearby when it happened. And I believe within a minute or two after his father was shot, he was by his father's side, but he's deeply traumatized by it. And I think the biggest mistake Junior ever made was joining Trump rather than running against him. Of course, the Democrats keep attacking Junior as he tries to improve the health crisis in this corrupt Trump administration that nobody can stand. It's got to be like having your hands tied behind your back. Everything he does, they try to argue against him. So you can see here where they're arguing with Junior over vaccines and COVID medication or COVID booster access or whatever. I say don't take any of that crap personally. Let's listen to what a true American has to say about Trump. Al Green, who it's a shame he's not an independent. Got to get away from the left wing and the right wing. They're both two wings of the same dirty bird. And it's not an eagle, it's a chicken, the pig of the bird family. Independents can unite in the middle. That's why they fear a strong independent leader.
To take over 300 million people to war without consulting with the Congress of the United States of America. I do this because if I do not, this authoritarian president that we currently have will continue to assume power. He has already instigated an assault on the citadel of democracy, the capital of the United States of America. He went so far as to pardon the persons who were actually involved in the assault. He has denied persons due process of the law. I believe that if we do not take immediate action, this authoritarian president will not only devolve the country into authoritarianism, I believe he is a would-be dictator who would become a dictator. So I today announce that later today, I will bring these articles of impeachment to the floor and I will call for a vote. I believe that the hour of decision is upon us and we all have to decide, are we going to go down and choose the path of democracy, or we allow ourselves to choose the low road of autocracy? I believe that this country has come too far to allow a single person to declare war without conferring with the Congress of the United States of America. This is where I stand, this is what I will do, and I do it in the name of my country that I love dearly. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
And they're working on a new petition to impeach Trump. I know each time it's been gaining momentum. It's been a few times that they've tried to do it, and just this past time, they had even more votes. They get more and more votes each time, and the more horrible things that Trump does, the more people can't stand him. Last, let's check out the Brush Junkie YouTube channel. They have a fire expert who's going to talk about all of these unnatural man-made fires that we've been seeing all around the country. There's going to be a lot of photos. You guys are, you don't want to miss this. It's going to be a lot of information.
Captain Matt Dakin. He has 30 years experience as a fire captain fighting fires. And today he's going to go over some of the fire damage that we've been seeing over the past years. And he's also going to share what he is doing about it, since there's very little we can do, with these unnatural fires. And a lot of people ask, we know this is happening, so what would we do, meanwhile? So thank you, Captain Matt, for joining us and lending your expertise today.
Thank you, Tracy and Shane. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Just a quick background. I did 33 total years in the fire service. The last 30 were in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've been on a lot of fires all throughout the state through my career on strike teams working with CAL FIRE on a lot of the big incidents. And it wasn't until the Tubbs fire when I realized that something was off, because it was off the charts, the magnitude and the amount of fires compared to anything I had ever seen. That night, just in the surrounding counties around me, and I'm in Sonoma County, there were over 70 fires, and I was listening to them all night on my radio. I have a radio I have all the local emergency agencies programmed in where I can listen, and I was listening, and as I was watching the Tubbs fire go from Calistoga over to Santa Rosa, crossing a highway 101 and burning down a fully sprinklered Kmart building, and just was unbelievable. And listening on the radio as people were trapped up at Clear Lake and they were having to use boats to rescue people, and just on and on and on what was going on. It was over the top, so different than anything I'd ever experienced. I experienced over the years, a lot of wind events where it's real windy. We've never had that many fires. So that was when I first realized that something wasn't right. And then when we started looking into hearing the stories and looking into the burn patterns and how things burn, that's when we knew. I did some videos with my friend John Lord about the fires and what we saw, the complete destruction all the way down to burning out. Usually in a fire, when a fire burns, in a house fire, you can go through after the house is burned and you can usually tell, oh, this was the kitchen, this was the bathroom, this, because the shells of the appliances are still there, the toilet's still there, the tub's still there, because they don't burn. But, in the tub's fire, there was nothing.
I'm curious, did you share these concerns with your fellow firefighters, and what kind of reaction did you get? What was the talk?
So there were a few that I think could see that something wasn't right, but most people were oblivious. Most people were just going along with, that's climate change. Oh my God, climate change is so bad. So most people buy the narrative. And I had already gone down a lot of other rabbit holes. I have a love for the truth and so they already kind of looked at me as kind of maybe a nut or whatever. Been complaining for years about the spraying, about the chemtrails, and which I know that's not the geoengineering, solar radiation management, but the slang term is chemtrails, and I couldn't get many of them to even look up. They just think that's nutty. They just think it's contrary. Yeah. So I already kind of had that reputation, and when you know that it's just going to make you stand out more of a nut, you kind of pick and choose who you're even going to share the information with. But most people were clueless. I hate to say it.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping things have changed significantly.
I think they have. There's so much that has come out. So much has come out. So much of the corruption in so many ways. And once you realize that, the government is all either doing or allowing this to happen over here, then you get a new set of eyes for everything else. And that's what happened with me when I first learned about the Federal Reserve and how things really work, how monetary system really works. 25 years ago, it gave me a new set of eyes to see everything else. And I started going down a lot of deep rabbit holes.
Yeah. Shane, you want to show some of the images that you got?
Yes, but before I do, I just want to say that your interview with Shelley and John Lord was actually one of the early influences on my understanding of fire behavior. And so I really appreciated that. And we will link that in the description as well. All right.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. It really opened my eyes and really got me looking at stuff. And that was within, a month or two of the Paradise Fire?
Yeah, the Paradise Fires were in 2018. So that was a year later after the Tubbs Fire. And that's when I went with my friend John Lord, and who's since passed, as well as Jamie Lee from A Plain Truth, who's also since passed. And we actually brought Deborah Tavares and her husband Lou up there with us. If you know who she is, she has StopTheCrime.net. We also brought her up there.
We do.
So we had a lot of eyes on that looking, and John and I went up for several days and took a lot of photos. And it was very eye-opening what we saw. And I have a list of things that we saw that were just not normal.
Yeah, and I did actually grab some images from that interview with Shelley, and I'm going to go ahead and show some of these now and have you tell us what was anomalous about these.
Yeah, no, this is one of my favorite pictures right here. This was a tree, and I know Robert could probably tell you by looking at it what type of tree it was. But as you can see, there's no other vegetation around it. That is a blacktop school, a school blacktop area. You got your bike rack in the back there, and this tree was burned from the inside out, and it looks now like a barbecue pit. And that's just not how things burn. I mean, the inside is the most protected. If you burn a log in your fireplace, they burn from the outside in. Everything burns from the outside in, unless you're using a microwave, and microwaves heat up from the inside out. So, so this is what we noticed with all over up there in Paradise, was how the burning of the trees were from the inside out. And usually they start to burn because of the radiant heat from something that's hot next to them. The tree next to them is burning, and the heat from that catches these, or an ember comes and starts, and, you know, embers come and catch the leaves on fire. I mean, we saw tree after tree, bush after bush. I have manzanita bushes that were burned just like that, where they were burned at the base completely. Yeah, that one right there, that's a great one. Burned completely at the base and creating tunnel systems, but you can see none of the leaves burned. So the hardest part to burn, the thickest part, is burned all the way through, but the leaves aren't burnt, which should burn the easiest. And I was there with this manzanita bush. I know exactly where it was, and there was a fence right near here too, and the fence posts were only burned where the metal, where the wire or the nails were attached to it. So we started seeing the patterns of anything metallic that was touching metal, that's where it burned. And then all the trees where they were burning more underground than they were on top of the ground. Now fire, heat goes up. So, and not down. So these tunnel systems down in the ground should be the hardest to get lit. That's usually the safest place, down low in the fire. And this is where the most intense fire was. And Robert will tell you that the type of trees that he was finding were the most damaged were the water lovers, or the ones that were in the creeks. So yeah, that was tree after tree after tree that we saw where they were burned from the inside out, just like a microwave cooks. And that's the destruction that we saw. You know, I use the analogy, if you took a pile of bark and put it in a microwave versus a pile of nails and put it in a microwave, the nails are going to they're going to have a much bigger reaction than the tan bark. So yes, they're perfect. Those are all great. I've got those same bins. Those are great ones. That's what we saw right there, and that defies how things should normally. And if it was just one tree and everything else was burning normally, then it would be like, okay, something weird happened here to cause this. But this was tree after tree after tree. The other thing was, you know, PG&E. There was a ton of PG&E that was resources that were staged there prior to the Paradise Fire. So, and that and the multiple sources say that was up, I think, on Skyline Boulevard. There was this huge PG&E, so it's kind of coincidental. And then
the power lines were the blame, correct?
I believe so. Yeah, power lines or power. Yeah, yeah. It were burned over from like Magalia, I think, over that way, and came over.
Okay. Then do you know why these meters burn? I see this all the time.
So this isn't just here in Paradise. This is all over. Whether it's deliberate or not, I don't know, but it's a best case scenario. It's just a flaw in the meters. That's best case scenario, because there's been, from the time they started putting them in, there's been problems with these meters being a cause of fires. And so there was another one up there at the same, I think it might have been at Pearson Elementary School, part of the school that didn't burn. There was another meter in the hallway, covered hallway, which was still there. That, you know how you go hallways like between buildings, and there's a roof over your head, or a ceiling over your head. So and the meter there was melted. So there was no fire damage around it, but the meter was melted. So that was.
How far away from a actual fire damage would you say that was?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds of feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're part of the problem. Whether they're part of the weapon system, whatever you want to call it, smart meters are complicit in these fires, and to some extent, for sure.
All right.
I do believe that could be the induction phenomenon that is causing, current, eddy currents to flow through the wires and overload these smart meters like that.
Yeah, and that may be it may be an innocent thing, it may be whatever, but they're for sure part of the problem. I mean, before the fires ever happened, when they first started putting them in, there were fires that were going on because of the smart meters. So I was kind of following them. So
Okay. And Shane, you want me to show the glass? Maybe.
oh yeah, that's the other thing is the temperatures of these fires. In order to they make no sense. It's kind of like the fire in Maui. They make no sense of the complete destruction with nothing feeding it, with no fuel around it to feed it. Yes, exactly. Boy, you're on it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen them out in parking lots with nothing around. And, the other thing we saw a lot of was like the barrier guardrails. There's either 6x6 or 8x8s. I think they're like 8x8s or 10x10 posts coming up, and they're burned, but they're burned at the bolts. Yeah. So now a lot of the stuff they're replacing all metal.
Yeah, they're doing that around my house.
And one of the interesting things when we were driving around up there in the aftermath of Paradise, one of the things they were doing, they had the road blocked, and they said because they were replacing a culvert. Now, why would you need to replace a culvert unless the fire did something to the culvert and the metal culvert that,
Robert had told us about the same thing happening as well. And I do think that, actually, so this is an example of the underground utility lines. You can see the panels that are blackened on the sidewalk, and it looks like there was an underground fire.
Yep, it does. They won't burn the way I saw these cars burn. They wouldn't do that. And if one burned, there was a car 10 feet away, it's not necessarily going to burn because of this. And this is what we saw. We saw car after car burning with a plastic garbage can right next to it, not burning. Yeah, and that's exactly what we saw. That truck, there's nothing left except metal on that truck, basically. But so everything that wasn't metal or was touching metal is gone, but the plastic garbage can sitting there just fine, because things that were attached to metal seemed to burn if they were attached to the metal. Why did they get going like that? Why did they burn? Why did they burn when the plastic garbage can right next to it didn't burn? So it's how did they get going and burning in the first place would be my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you want to show these other ones, Shane?
Yeah. So one thing was clear to us, there was some sort of grounding, metal, there was a grounding effect, like lightning, wants to go to ground. And I think cars, there's a lot of metal there. And then maybe it lit the fires trying to ground metal to the ground, maybe got the tires going. And that's what got the cars going. I don't know, but there was definitely a whole grounding effect. And then anything touching the metal, and especially if the metal was trying to get to ground. So why did that happen? But I think it has to do with what we're seeing with the grounding effect. And I think that has to do with going to the trees with more water. They were burned the most from the inside out. So I think it was a technology that wanted to go to ground. And if it's hitting these cars, I don't know if they were targeted, the cars were targeted or whatever, but it was just super probably heating anything between them and the ground and maybe getting tires going. I don't know. But every time we saw with the steel belted radials, the tires were gone. But we saw a lot of tires without the steel belted radials that were still fine. So the metal definitely played a big factor. I mean, when you have tire after tire after tire with the steel belts and the tires are gone, but then you have the tire, there's just the rubber tire still there. So the metal definitely was a factor. The metal that shouldn't burn created the cause of the burning.
Yeah, I happen to know that when microwaves strike metals, they cause eddy currents within the metals that will seek ground. And if they don't reach ground, I'm sure you're going to end up with perhaps an overload situation.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Just heating up. So that's what it looks like. That's what it looked like happened.
And then Shane, do you want me to show the house?
Sure, actually. So you had mentioned before examples of differences between the Tubbs fire and the Paradise campfire. One of which was that there was like almost no shells of appliances left, as well as like tubs or sinks or anything like that. And this house almost looks like it imploded inward, like as if it had burned from the inside out. I want to get your opinion on that.
100%. That was one of the things that we noticed, that typically when houses burn, they tend to fall outward. But this, if the house is burning more from the inside out, the structural components on the inside are burning. That would, an inward collapse would make sense. And that's what it looks like here. Everything collapsed inwards because there's nothing out. I mean, yeah, that was something that we noticed, that they were collapsing inward on themselves. So good point. Plastic igloos, and plastic was the safest, being in a plastic igloo, or like a plastic dog house would have been your best bet during or in a tree. I mean, it's crazy. Heat goes up. There's a trailer park, and they're on these I-beams, and the I-beams were melted, and they're 2 feet off the ground or whatever, and they were completely melted.
What's an I-beam? I'm not
heavy metal. It's
that holds it up.
Heavy metal construction, like almost like railroad tracks. I mean, they're really heavy duty construction metal, and they were melted. So it takes a ton of heat to melt those. And this is what the trailers were sitting on at a trailer park. So, but I think, we pretty much covered everything else. So I'd like to talk about, and as we were mentioning before the show, that, we know these aren't natural. We know they've been controlling the weather. There's patents that you can look up. Dane Wigington has a site,
Geoengineeringwatch.org. We've actually interviewed him as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, and on his site, you can go at the top of the page, you look at patents, and you can see like a couple hundred patents from back in the late 1800s when they start. So, and when John and I were looking at the fire, the Paradise Fire, we're trying to shake out what could have caused this. We started looking up directed energy weapons. Then it's like, oh my God, it would explain everything. There's so many different types of technologies that would explain all this. But the scarier part was there was actually more technology on mind control with the directed energy weapons than even doing the damage that we're seeing here. So, we've seen it with the floods, and always blamed on climate change. And so ultimately, this is our public servants or our government that's allowing or doing it or allowing it to happen. And so I've been going down the road for quite a while now on what we can do about it. How do we take back our power? Because, the Declaration of Independence, the second paragraph, I'll just read it real quick. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. I mean, this is a founding document that's stating this. Okay, so we went from that, and we the people created the government and created a constitution to secure our rights. Now, people think the Constitution, we always hear about constitutional rights. That's a misnomer. There are no constitutional rights unless you're a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen. The Constitution does not give us rights. It secures our inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. But most people have been tricked, and most people have been tricked. So most people are walking around as United States citizens. And that was, the U.S. citizen was created in 1868 after the Civil War. And if you're a U.S. citizen, which most people just think it means being an American, and most people, good people, and they've said it all their lives on all their forms and everything. That's actually a federal citizen. A U.S. citizen is a federal citizen. Now, the federal government is supposed to have limited jurisdiction. If you look up Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the U.S. Constitution, it says that the Congress's limited jurisdiction is a 10-mile square area. That's it. but they've done this federal overlay to try and in 10 mile square area plus areas ceded by the states for forts, dockyards, post offices, things like that. That's it. That is their jurisdiction. That's the Congress's jurisdiction. But they've done this federal overlay in all the states, and they've gotten us to claim to be federal citizen, to be U.S. citizens. Everything is contractual, and all contracts are voluntary. So we all have the right to self-determination. We created the government. We created the Constitution in order to secure our rights, and the Constitution is the rules for them to follow. It's not, doesn't govern us, but when you're a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, now you have to follow. Now Congress created it, so now you're under Congress as a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, and now you have to follow every code, statute, regulation that they put out because you claim to be that. So I'm trying to get people to understand how to become one of the people with inalienable rights given to us by our Creator, and documents that they can see that'll show everything I'm saying. And I've just got some right here that I'll just read real quick. In Title 28, 300215A, you look up it's the definitions. It says United States means a federal corporation, because it is. They created a corporation and they named it United States. And if you look up under the Uniform Commercial Code 9-307H, it says the United States is located in the District of Columbia. So they created a corporation, they call it the United States, and it's located in DC. And they got everybody to claim to be a US citizen. So the de jure 50 states still exist. The United States of America still exists. But we don't understand, most people don't understand that they got two things going on at once, and they're constantly getting us to claim to be this subservient status as US citizens. So does this make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how much of this you're aware of or whatever. I don't want to go too fast.
It's new to me, but I'm kind of following. I have it pulled up here.
So basically, U.S. Secretary of State is kind of the gatekeeper for citizenship evidence. They're the department that issues passports. So by sending an affidavit to this U.S. Secretary of State of your decision to be a national with inalienable rights given to you by your Creator and not a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, then you send a notarized affidavit stating that, then that gets you out of their system, because it is all voluntary, but it's all been deceptive, but it's all voluntary. So that's how we get out of it. And then we have to, and then just continue to learn all the other adhesion contracts that they've got us into with our driver's license and Social Security, all these different things. So it's learning the rules of the game. If I have a Black's Law dictionary, and when you look up the word person, it says a person is a corporation, as that term is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So that's the 14th Amendment. And in my Black's Law dictionary that I have right behind me, it says corporations or quote persons, is that word is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. So everything is commerce now. They have commercialized everything. We are just entities. That's why when you're dealing with the government, they're always dealing with us as an entity in an all capital letter name.